Okay guys, welcome to today, the week 4, and what we're really going to concentrate on today is what we're going to do in here next week with our posters. Now, we've covered over the last couple of weeks or so some of the ideas about communicating, about choosing understanding the impact of who your audience is going to be on the way that you actually choose how to present the information. And next week's challenge is to present your infographic poster, which provides those eye-catching and attention-catching facts and figures and statistics that you've been researching about your particular topic that you're going to write your article about. Kind of think of it as though it's a visual index item, and although we won't actually do it in the e-book because it kind of doesn't work very well, or hasn't in the past, but imagine that the readers out there are looking at your set of about 40 odd posters, or little infographic posters, and you're trying to catch their attention with some statistics about things they didn't know, but which you are going to show them as really important to their business or to their life, so that they go and look at your article first. So that's what you're really trying to do, is to grab someone's attention to say, yeah, ow, I didn't know about that, but clearly it's important to me, and I now need to go and read your article, the one that you're going to write over the next 7 or so weeks, and then they're going to read it, and hopefully you'll be able to come up with some very interesting recommendations at the end of your article that helps them understand both the scale of the problem they are facing, and maybe here are 1 or 2 interesting ideas based on the literature that you've based your article around that might help them mitigate the risk or the problem, i.e. make it less of a problem to them. So that's what you're really trying to do. And in order to do that, I will be producing you this little spreadsheet which we will use next week. Let's see how I can get this. I know what to do. And what we're going to do today, we're going to brainstorm. Now, basically, I want to have 4 basic criteria which score 0, 7, 10 and 15 kind of as a sort of scale. And we're going to spend most of this afternoon, well, the session here, to try and work out what are the criteria that we need to have there that are ones that as a group you agree are important in terms of assessing the impact of that infographic poster. Because I'll be printing out something like 5 copies of that for each one of you here, so there'll be about 200, a pile of about 200, 250 sheets of paper sat on the front here. You will grab 5 of them or so, and then you will go round and look at the various posters which are going to be stuck up here. I'm going to bring a pack of blue tack for you, and you will bring a nice A4 print in colour of your poster. And you'll pop it up around here. We'll move the tables around so that we can build a little stack underneath each poster as the marks are filled in by you. So when you filled it in, and maybe with, as you'll see below it, a little box where you will make some positive feedback comments. That in principle, if you had another chance to improve your poster, these comments here will either be in the nature of, hey, wow, this really gets it because That's the first one, the positive comment, and then you might feel a need to, but by the way, do you think, or did you think about something that you felt wasn't really as good as it could be? But it's not, this is rubbish. You're not allowed to put seriously negative, flaming sort of comments there. It's positive, help to develop. Part of this team building approach that you're going to need to use next year when you get out into your job, where you are going to be, many of you, working in teams, and you know, the idea behind teamwork is that you help each other and other people will help you to improve so that the results of the work from the team is as great and as impressive as it's possible to get it. So you don't tell someone they're absolutely rubbish and they can go away and leave the team. That's not kind of helpful. Because that's going to reflect on the team, because something's going to get missed out. Something won't get done, or the remaining members of the team are going to have to do more and more and more work to get the job done. So the idea is to get everybody doing as well as possible. And that's what that's going to be about. Before we get into the discussion of the criteria, and some of you may well have looked at last year's criteria before I hid them just now. The purpose of this discussion here is to choose criteria for assessing the posters which you guys as a group are comfortable with and agree with. They could be completely different criteria from last year. The point is you are doing the primary assessment work because you are, in a sense, also the target audience. So your reactions to the infographic posters around the walls are going to be helpful to your peers, the people you've assessed, to say, you've connected with me really well, or if you've got the top end one, or, well actually, because that wow factor is, well, yeah, you really connected, I fully get what you're trying to say. If you end up with an oops sort of bottom end, that's kind of, well, you didn't connect with me at all. There's something missing in that communication. I really didn't understand what you're saying, and it didn't catch me at all. And then the other two are, well, that's okay, not too bad. I can kind of get what you're saying, but it's all right. It's a pass. And the good one is, yeah, well, you got quite well through to me, but I still think actually you could have connected better. And so it's really to get you comfortable with those criteria which you want to use that really reflects a stunning or a lousy poster. And what will happen is we'll work out, we can have as many or as few criteria as you like. What will then happen is I will pick up all of the scores. I will then add them up. I'll look at them as well. I will assess all of them as well myself. And one or two other of my colleagues will be up here, if they're available, to also have a look around, and they will also assess same scale. And that will form part of the moderating aspect of it, so that, yes, you'll do the work as a group. I will then check that I agree with the results, because sometimes, for whatever reason, you know, there are occasions when sometimes too many friends get together and give 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, which is kind of, or 15, 15, 15, which is kind of a problem, and I'll be watching around to make sure that you aren't corralling your friends to give me the best possible score. I will also be checking for whether or not there's some numbers which are clearly way out of the sort of normal area, so that you won't be penalised for one or two perhaps vindictive, this is lousy. It can occasionally happen, has occasionally happened. And so I'm controlling the overall process so that you get a score for this component of your portfolio which I and my colleagues moderating believe is a fair reflection of what you're actually getting, or what you're actually doing and what you've done. It's also, again, part of employability to learn how both to self-assess and also to peer assessing each other's work. And getting comfortable with this, because you will be doing this a lot in the future. Happening more and more in businesses and industry, that this sort of peer assessment effect works. And you use it partly in terms of this to improve each other's work, and partly because, A, we have to assess each other every now and then. So it's related to employability, it's related to what you will be doing in the future, and it's related to part of the overall assessment. Now, interestingly, last year, most people scored very, very well on most of the posters. So this is an area where, a bit like the presentational aspect of your article, I won't say it's money for old rope, but it's an area where people actually pull themselves up in the overall module by doing a good piece of work on this poster. And downstairs this afternoon, you have the opportunity for presenting your poster to me, as far as it's got so far, and then asking if you need or if you want for advice on how to improve it. So that's what we do afterwards, once we've worked out what go in those boxes, and we'll fill as many of those boxes as you guys feel is important. Now, is that clear? Everybody got a feel for what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it, and why it's so important that you should do it, this peer marking for this element. I'm not going to do peer marking for the assignment, the article. That's my responsibility in total, because it's very difficult, I've found, to actually make that work very effectively without me having to actually go over all of the assignments again. And so that's kind of wastes your time, and it wastes my time. So I'm going to do the articles overviewed by and moderated by a colleague, but you're going to have the practice at this infographic. Because, hey, in a sense, I have, in many respects, more knowledge than the average punter out there who wants to read these things. And so, in a sense, you are in a more representative position to assess the pull factor of those posters, maybe, than I am, because I might either over or under by making some assumptions, whereas you guys come with your knowledge, you've done research into big data and the Internet of Things in a whole range of areas, but not in all areas. So you are the best audience, actually, for most of this sort of assessment of the posters. So, a reminder, you will need your student number at the bottom of your poster so that everybody can actually identify on their piece of paper the student number, not name, just student number. Try and anonymise it somewhat. And then, now, we'll get on with this. What's the first, most really vital item that we need to think about as we assess those infographic posters for their pulling power to get the reader or the viewer of the poster to really want to read that article that goes with it? Visual impact. Okay, now what I'll do first of all, I'll just write down the ideas first of all. Let's just brainstorm some ideas, then we'll go back and have a bit more of a discussion about each one and what we really mean by that, and how will we actually assess it as oops, but good, okay, good, or excellent. We'll come back to that one in a bit, because you're going to need to do that in a bit. So first one, visual impact. Next factor.
Title.
Pardon?
Title.
Title?
Title, sir.
Okay. Do you mean title or do you mean topic?
Topic.
Topic. Okay, we'll have a look at topic. Yeah. Information. Now.
Should be some information.
Oh, hold on a minute. Sorry, Victor?
Yeah, I'm just saying there should be some information that's surprising.
Yeah, so are you talking about specific texty information, or are you thinking about statistics, numbers? It is infographic.
Kind of both.
Okay.
Something that makes me think. That makes me remember that.
Well, we'll just record that for the moment. So we've got visual impact, the topic. We might have to change the sequence a bit to make it more logical. The fact that there are some interesting or make me think type of statistics, data, yeah.
Colour.
Pardon?
Colour.
Colour. Yes, so the colour balance.
It's part of visual.
Would that be on visual impact?
We can come back to that in a minute to see whether that colour composition comes to impact or whether they are actually different things. But let's just brainstorm for a moment.
Target audience.
Target audience. Ah. Okay, clear target audience, yeah. Oops. So, clarity of target audience, yeah.
Informative.
Yeah. Yeah, any more?
Information needs to be up to date.
Ah.
Can you spell date wrong?
Hold on, I'll just add some rows here. Yeah. We're running out of rows. Okay, next one.
Easy to read.
Yeah.
Does it actually get the message across?
Right, easy to read.
Put that in already.
Have we, where have we got that? Oh, sorry, yes, we have, haven't we? Yeah. Right, anything else that, sorry, yeah.
Attractive titles, subtitles. I don't know what's coming under the
Well, okay, you're thinking about title, so does that really come into the topic bit? The fact you've got a good title makes it obvious what the topic's about.
summary.
Hold on.
But does he like actually get the message across that he's trying to give?
Yeah.
Put that.
Now, how many of you have got tablets or things that you can connect to the internet and have a look at a few examples of infographic posters that you can find out there? How many of you got some devices handy that you could use today, now, this very moment? Or have we got too few? Have a look at some infographic posters to see whether they have summaries available or how they actually structure themselves. Because we're trying to use the best examples of infographic posters as a sort of as a way of thinking about designing your own. So, do they have a summary in them? Should we have summary as part of this set here? Because we don't want to have too many sections, ideally.
You can tell the stories in equal language.
Telling the
Well,
story.
if it's an infographic poster, it should be more obviously graphics than text, isn't it? You have to avoid much text.
Yeah, so there's a comment here that suggests that if it's infographic, then we should have fewer words and more impact from the graphs or the images or the statistics. Is that, I mean, if you think about the infographic posters you've looked at, does that actually make sense? So we've got visual impact, we've got topic and title, so can I see very quickly what it's about? Have I got some really good statistics and graphs and images that really, again, draw me to it and make it very clear what a topic is all about? And colour composition and visual impact kind of perhaps fit together. Maybe we merge those two. But that's up to you to decide whether you want to have them as two separate items or whether you would like to just kind of bring them together as a composite thing. Are Otherwise, you might lead yourself to difficulties. Yeah, it's a good visual impact, but it's lousy colour composition, or vice versa. You don't want to lead yourself to a position where you get conflicting grading approach. It kind of is difficult.
I don't think you can have a good visual impact with bad code.
So does that mean, folks, ladies and gentlemen, that we actually merge those two together?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, so we've got that there, we've got topic title, statistics to make me think, clear target audience. Now the easy to read one I rather like actually, it's a good one to remember to have because sometimes people make the text too small because they want to get lots of words in. Now remember, this is going to be printed on A4, which is not very big. And whilst when you write an assignment, we typically expect you to write in 10-point or 12-point text, I've seen people think, ooh, I need to get more words in, so I'll go to 8-point or even 7-point, at which point you start needing your microscope to be able to actually read it. You know, it's just and that's not going to work. So easy to read kind of implies we're using relatively large fonts, which mean that relatively few words. It also means you have to think a little bit about what type of font should I use. Should I use a serif font like, well, like I'm using here, Times New Roman, or, yeah, I'm using Times New Roman here, but you could use one or two of the other ones. Palatino's a good one if you want to go serif. Or do you go with the general standard of using something like Arial?
Time neutral. Time neutral.
You like the Times New Roman? Now, interesting, over the last 10, 15 years, people have been using sans serif fonts like Arial more and more. Let me show you what Arial would look like. Now that is the style that a lot of people use a lot of the time. Now what's really interesting is that over the last 20, 30 years, some research has been done, there's quite a lot done in the sort of 70s and the 80s, about whether to use that sort of sans serif font or that sort of serif font. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Make a point. A little bit smaller.
Make it full screen.
Yeah, I could do it full screen as well. Who finds it quicker and easier to read the left-hand version? Who finds it quicker and easier to read that version? Left-hand version is Times New Roman. Who likes Times New Roman better than the Arial? Who likes Arial? That's quite an interestingly large change from, say, 20 years ago. Interesting. So that tells you guys something about the design of your poster and whether you should use a sans serif font or a serif font. 80-odd% of you guys found that easier to read. That's an enormous change on 30-odd years ago when that, Times New Roman and Courier, were considered to be the type of font that people could read fastest and get the gist very, very quickly. And that's why I insist, as a general rule, on your articles to be written in Palatino or Times New Roman, a serif font, because I read those much more effectively. I find that, for me, I find that one much, much slower to read.
Why?
I don't know. There was research, the research done back in the 70s and the 80s was not why, but about what proportion. And it was found then, and it may have been the way we were taught to read and write, the way we were taught to write our letters as kids. I don't know. Or it could be that some of the little serifs make it easier to work out. For example, the difference between an I, uppercase I, capital I, and a lowercase L. You see, if you look at L, visual, you've got a vertical bar and a vertical bar for the capital I. Identical shape. Over here, a lowercase L and an uppercase I are obviously different because of the little feet across the top and bottom, the serif. It could have been that back then as well we didn't have Arial, we had a font called Helvetica, which was a truly evil font. It was very, very, you know, if you had an R and an N next together, say turn, it looked like a T-U-M, because they hadn't got the gaps between the letters very, very well designed. Whereas with Arial, they solved the problem that Helvetica had. So there's a lot of things going on as to what makes things easy for people to read quickly and efficiently, and what slows them down. So, you have got some evidence here. You can now make your own decision as to whether you want to use something like Arial. You might not use Arial, but you might use a different font, which is maybe easier but hasn't got the serifs. Or you may decide to use Times New Roman or the one or two of the really nice other serif fonts. So there's lots of opportunities. So we've got readability there. Informative. How are you going to interpret that, guys? How are you going to interpret from oops to wow on the informative parameter? What does it mean to you?
Does it give like relevant information?
Does it give relevant information? How are you going to decide on whether it's relevant or not?
Like the title.
So does it relate to the title
The topic.
and the topic?
Yeah.
Okay, now that's useful to think about. What else might you want to include under the informative sort of area? Sorry? Persuasive. Do you think that's a new category now? Okay, thank you. Good. So, now we've got that one, and we've got this minor one at the bottom, up-to-date information.
Well, don't you think the up-to-date information should be in group 16? Row 16?
What? So, informative and up-to-date?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move that. Good thinking. Okay, so we've got informative and up-to-date, so yeah. You kind of feel how that's going to work, do you yet? Think about the poster you've already, as far as already designed now. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 4, 6, 7. 7 items there, 7, that's 70, 105. That's okay, that's a nice one, I can scale that easily. Okay, we've got to that stage. Now think about your own posters, or that example infographic you've got sitting in front of you on your little screen or your big screen. Do you now feel that you can actually apply those reasonably well? Boom. Well, you might want to think about practicing on a whole set of those infographic posters you can get off the internet. See, and think about, as you apply it, think about filling in that box. Would you like a little bit of practice in the workshops this afternoon? To get a feel for it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'll
Does
put
it
this
have
up.
to be, by the way, does it have to be like portrait or landscape? Does it matter?
Now, again, it might well be, I mean, have a think about the sort of infographic posters that are out there. Which format are they mostly in?
Landscape.
The landscape? They're mostly sort of, some of them are about 4 pages deep. So, you know, if you want to try and print it on an A3, it's sort of in the about half of the middle of it, and it's sort of that long, and you still can't read it. So you need to print it on 3 or 4 pages deep. How? Think about.
Sorry, I was just thinking that maybe you have to have a balance between the text and the graphics or pictures or whatever. Because there's some things that you cannot put into a picture.
There's that as well, yeah. But then they do say a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah, but if you can introduce for example, the topic, a little paragraph on the topic. I mean, not saying too
Like
much,
me,
but
yeah. But remember the size, the readability thing then. If you do need to put an introduction or something in context, then you have to think about how to do it. So to answer the portrait landscape, well, if you see what current practice tends to be, but that doesn't have to force you to be one or the other. Think about how to best convey the information. Sometimes it actually is better landscape, because you want to show the flow of work from the top into 2 or 3 streams perhaps, or have 2 or 3 columns. It's going to work better in landscape. Makes it very difficult if you turn it around and try to do it in portrait. So you think about the logic of what you're trying to present. Think about those images you're putting in there, and so on. So there's a lot of questions you've got to ask yourself as to how do I put this together to be persuasive, informative, up-to-date, easy to read. How are you going to identify your audience? How's that going to work, guys? Have you thought about that so far? How does it affect what you've already done with your poster? Anything more you'd like to add?
A clear message that you want to get across, or an end objective, or an end product that you want to get across should be clear what you're trying to say.
How should we capture that on here? Is that the topic? Is it the persuasiveness? Is it the informative, up-to-date, clear target audience, the statistics?
The title, subtitle.
Or is it the title?
Each section.
The title and topic, and maybe a few bit of words that help you. Think about those think near infographic posters I've sort of given you some or circulated for the location-based services type of infographic posters, or many of the others there. How much text do they need to identify the topic or the audience? Or does the audience select itself based on maybe the information and the statistics? They just grab, oh, I'm interested in that particular type of topic. How does it work, guys? Remember, I teach questions, not answers. Because the answers, well, there's going to be 30 or 40 of them. Each of you is going to have a different answer because of who you are, your background, your experience, the topic that you've chosen, the research you've done, the statistics you've chosen. They're all part of the context of you thinking about these questions to come up with a great poster. What would happen if I gave you some answers to some of these? If I said from my position as your lecturer, then it ought to be portrait, what's going to happen? They'll all be portrait, won't they? And if I say, to make it easy to read, you must use Arial or whatever, they'll all be the same, won't they? But if if we look at what's out there, they're all different. Choose what you think, what your experience shows works best. And you could even use this little grid today, tomorrow, over the weekend, to work with your colleagues, that's you guys here, and do a self-assessment, do an assessment of each other's. Make those comments. You fill in a little box down here. Help each other to improve your posters that you've already written, and we'll do some work in the labs shortly, and then you can do this during the week, so that by the time you get here, this time next week, you've really cracked it. You've taken as much feedback from everybody else around you to develop that stunning wow factor, so that ideally we're filling in almost all the posters and are going to hopefully fit in the 10 or 15 mark. Because your feedback to each other will get it out of the oops or the okay sort of level. Work together, guys, over the next 7 days so that you have something here this time next week which is great or spectacular wow. Feel comfortable with that, guys?
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Will you post that on Blackboard?
Pardon?
Will you post
It will be on Blackboard before we leave here. Okay? I might tidy it up slightly and move them around a little bit for next week, but they've got their factors here already.
So when we hand in this in, it's just turning up a bit next week.
You have to turn up next week, but guys, the only assessment, unless you have really good reason to delay this, the assessment, will be in here at 1 o'clock next week. It'll be posted up, you'll stick it up on the wall, and then you'll assess each other's, and that is the fundamental assignment the poster marking period. Okay guys, I'll see you in about 10 minutes downstairs.